real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was a...
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Celestial Oddities Pair of Normal Guys podcast. I am Frater Crow.
And I'm your co-host, Daniel and James.
We want to thank you for tuning in to another brand new episode. We are happy to be here. If you haven't catched our last few, you've been missing out on some great topics and great episodes, so make sure you jump back. If you're new to the show, we do bring you a show each and every other, I don't know if that's a real term, every other week here, Thursday nights, 8 to 9:30 p.m., sometimes 8 to 9 p.m. on all platforms, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, iTunes, you name it, we are on it. So listen where you feel most comfortable. Please click the like, share, and follow buttons, because the more that you do that, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings. More people that discover the show, keeps you in touch with new episodes as they air, and gives you that unfiltered access to our past episodes as well. So if you are a fan of the supernatural and the paranormal, you'll love the show. Thank you so much for listening. We have another great topic tonight, or actually I should say interview tonight. As this year we are mixing it up a little bit on the show, bringing more interviews on. Daniel and I are jumping into a lot more topics as well on the show, and we are also going to be doing more of the call-in shows where people can share their experiences, so something for absolutely everyone. Tonight we have Terra Ranee Buentello. She is a psychic medium. She specializes in tarot reading, astrological readings, palm readings, rune readings, and also channeling as well with spirits of both, the living and demonic spirits as well. So we look forward to picking into her brain a little bit, see how she works, what she does, and have a fun night. So stick around. And Dan, how do you feel about tonight's episode?
I'm pretty excited to talk to you, Tara. I think we might have some things in common, and I'll be honest that your presence is a little new to me, and I checked you out, and I'm really excited to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time out of your life to look into what I do.
No, absolutely.
Very cool.
So why don't we start it out? I always like to start out interviews, very traditional on any of the shows that I do, and ask you how it is that you got into psychic mediumship. I mean, was it something that you had with you as a child, or something you had to kind of fine-tune into? Tell us a little bit more about, your start.
Well, I cannot go into all the details because I actually didn't gain my abilities from anything like occult teachings or learnings. I believe that I might have been born with it. A traumatic experience as a kid led to me being open to the dark arts, I would say dark spirits. So I then started channeling as a younger child, very young, probably about 4, 5, 6, and then on. I started channeling with what I know now is a pretty high rank infernal spirit. I did not know that at the time. Anyways, it basically, raised me, taught me everything that I know. I went through the process as a teenager of, wondering if I was to be diagnosed with something. My whole family knew it about me, but the thing is I was able to prove, I think by the time I was a teenager, probably 12, 11, I was able to prove to my family members and other family members that I was in fact talking to deceased family members that had passed on with, like a 99% accuracy skill rating, which is what I still hold. So I then threw everything out the window that I was potentially, something was wrong with me, and then I just dove really deep into the occult studies. I realized that there was a world of people out there that were just like me, And from there, I've been taking clients probably for about 8 years now.
Wow, it's pretty interesting. Now, you said a couple things that really stuck with me, that when I was a child, I used to have encounters in my childhood home that no one else was really experiencing. And over the years, I was able to get some recordings of the spirits that I was talking to before I even knew what EVPs were at the time. And I've talked about this on different shows over the years. It was quite interesting that later on in life, I was always really into the occult. But as I dived deeper and deeper into it, I was able to come across some knowledge that these things were with me since a very young child. Before I even got into the occult, I had demonic spirits around me. So it was very, very interesting. It's not something you hear every day, but you know what I'm talking about. It's quite an interesting, way to grow up and not know what these things are. Are you crazy? Do you have something wrong with you? Because I thought the same thing. And even went to the doctor at one point. And they said, there's nothing wrong with you. I had told my mom, I think I'm going insane, Mom. And when I went, they're like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, well, why the hell am I hearing all these, spirits around me and voices? And that's when I got the idea of the recorder. And I didn't watch any ghost shows back then. I'm just like, I wonder if I can catch these things. And sure enough, I actually did. And that's what kind of launched my paranormal career, is, where are these things coming from? So that's very interesting that you said that. Now, you said, so it's both spirits of the dead and also demonic. Is that correct?
Well, I actually specialize in speaking to any spirit, so I try to be as humble as possible, but I've been doing this for a long time. With proven accuracy, I can contact any spirit, whether it's alive, whether it's dead, human being. I can contact gods, angels, demons. If you can channel it, I can do it. I was actually interested in what you were talking about with the recordings, because I have not bridged over to that experience yet. I've kind of wanted to, but I'm a little bit spooked when it comes to doing house readings, and I've done it before. I've done big jobs before, but it always really freaked me out, not going to lie, going into like what I would consider to be a haunted area. Whereas what I do on a daily basis, for some reason, it doesn't spook me out. But when I go to haunted locations, I've always been, a little bit freaked out. But I would be really interested in bridging over to that one day, getting some equipment, learning about the paranormal investigation side to being a medium.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It leads to some very interesting moments, because like I said, as a child, I really didn't know what exactly was going on, what was happening. And I didn't watch, like I said, anything paranormal, didn't really know about the paranormal. I was just a young kid, but I knew something was going on here, and I was able to capture that. And when I did, I kind of broke everything that I understood reality as being at that time, because wait a second, these things that almost made me think I was crazy were able to be caught on audio and heard externally by the human ear. And I'm like, how is that possible? And then at that point, I couldn't get enough of it. And I always would, dig farther and further into it. But by no means on my end was I ever what I would consider a medium of any sort or a channeler. These things would happen sporadically. I wasn't calling upon them. They would just show up from time to time. So very different in that regard, but interesting nonetheless. Dan, what's your thoughts?
Oh, I'm just enjoying the conversation. So I have a similar background. However, I work in a different field with different beings, different entities. So my background has always been in extraterrestrials. So I work with what I call star family. I work with beings from other planets, beings from other densities. And so I think in a sense, I have a low-level understanding of connection to my mediumship abilities. And I am a channeler myself. So I'll be interested to talk to you, Terra, about, how you came into channeling, what that was like for you earlier on. Now, I'm what's called as a trance channel, so I'll alter my brainwave frequencies and sort of put myself into a semi-lucid state where I open myself up like a phone, like a two-way radio, and then I sort of reach out to connect to beings from other densities and other versions of reality. But like I said, I work with extraterrestrial consciousness. So I actually wanted to compliment you as well, and like sort of your visual aesthetic. You have a very sort of, in a sense, extraterrestrial aesthetic to the way that you look, and I vibe with that. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to go for that.
So do you work at all with any extraterrestrials as well, or is it just sort of more
So I was actually going to comment on that. My boyfriend, for some reason, has beings that are trying to speak to him. Now, my boyfriend is on the same skill level that I am because I taught him everything that I know. but for some reason different spirits attract to him, whereas I tend to specialize in the infernal, divine, and specific gods, and mostly speaking to humans that have passed on. That is number one, my specialty. But for some reason, extraterrestrial and what we have considered aliens, or he's seen them before, and I've seen them once. But they've just recently started to make contact with us, probably a couple of months ago. Now
Very cool.
They don't try to make very much contact with me, more so with him. But I'm really interested in reaching out to them and learning to work with them more. It is different. I would say the frequency is almost off-putting compared to what I'm used to working with,
Sure.
which is another reason I haven't bridged all the way to the extraterrestrial side of things, because the frequency almost comes off as like ethereal and almost celestial angel type vibration versus a lower frequency that a human or a infernal spirit will bring. You know what I mean?
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely. Totally. Yeah, it's a frequency dissonance that we experience when we're newer to their energy and to their frequencies. So that's really cool that you guys are starting to make contact, though. That's my field. You and Garrett will probably have a lot to talk about, but you want to talk aliens, I got your back.
Well, if you want to send them
guy.
a message, if you want to send them a message to come talk to me, I am 100% open to being open to what they want to teach me or what they would like to talk about. Now, I have one more thing to say on that term, and I know this isn't a show talking about psychedelics and whatnot, but I do have a little bit of experience with diviner's herb back when it was legal, of course, before that went down. And I can say that I think I've met them, literally. Whatever is a celestial being that has a message to bring to Earth, I've met them a couple times on that frequency, but other than that, I haven't met them yet.
You haven't been able to attune your mind, without the aid to that exact,
pretty
frequency.
much. With the aid, it was just natural, but without that aid, I can't say that I've ever come across them.
Well, I think that brings, an interesting topic in itself, that the use of hallucinogens or use of any type of, plant medicine can take you to places that your mind, even if you are a very versed channeler or practitioner, you really can't always reach. I personally have never done DMT, but I know people that have, and they talk about the elves and everything that a lot of people have in common. Naturally, I have through Kundalini Rising, but I haven't through actual lab made, and I have no plans to. I don't party anymore, but when I used to party, that's something people would talk about doing, and something they always had in common was they would talk about the little elf creatures that they would come in contact with. And through my occult practices, through all the practitioners I've talked to and had dealings with over the years, no one ever talked about those same exact beings. So it seems to be a dimension that can only be reached through that substance.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. Is it a fabrication of the mind, but for some reason is connected with everyone who does it, or does it truly take you to a dimension unknown? And that's the big question between a lot of things, I think, in the supernatural, in the paranormal, even in the occult. Is it happening subjectively or objectively? And that's where we really need to define it. Now, when you are doing it as you do for other people and you're getting that accuracy, then that can be something that's proven, but not always our experiences can. So it always begs the question, is it real or is it not?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure you get some slack from that. I mean, I would imagine in your field you have people that are skeptical until you prove them wrong.
Yeah, I mean, right now, with what I do now, and you mentioned trance channeling, I used to be a trance channeler when I was first really starting mediumship. It helped me obtain what I can do now. Right now, what I do is I specialize in automatic writing, and I'm actually trying to move off of that to using just about nothing, or perhaps having an aid like a crystal ball, but I'm not really using it. But right now, what I have to rely on is automatic writing, and that's what I am. I'm an automatic writer specialist. And like I said, right now I can prove at any given time for any spirit. I mean, I could take a client right now off the street and I would be able to prove who I'm talking to. My clients require, without fail, a level of accuracy, because with this work there's no room for it, in my opinion. And I guess that's kind of what sets me apart from a lot of other mediumship practitioners, is because when you come to me to get a spirit channeling, there is no room for error, and I prove it every time. And I've been diligently practicing to get that accuracy under the direction of my spirit guides, because it has to be that way. You know what I mean? So I tend to not professionally practice any other sort of contact, even with like celestials or, aliens, whatnot, because I can't prove it. When it comes to human mediumship and things like that, I can prove it. So I try to stick to areas of practice that are only proven. I would love to be able to do more, but like, you know what I mean? My clients, as of right now, they require like a certain level of transparency, you know?
Well, I mean, if they're coming to you for a service, just like any service, they're going to want to make sure that you perform the way that they expect you to for the money. So when you do that, you're going to build a loyal fan base, a client base that is going to continue to return, because there's a lot of people out there that do similar practices, but are they getting the return for their investment? And that's the important thing.
Absolutely right. Yep. And it's very rewarding, very rewarding.
Just out of curiosity on the business side, because I offer what I would call spiritual services as well, and I have clients as well in a similar way. Are you full-time at this, or is this all you do for?
I'm full-time. I work every single day, all day long. I do everything every day. I do a mediumship at least once a day. There was a time, and this is just recent, where my mediumship has picked up this year. There was a time when I was only doing tarot readings, and that was my main moneymaker. But I wanted so bad for people to see that I'm a medium. You know, my specialty is this, and then it just took off. Like when I started putting out my videos, and I started doing my live streams, and people were like, "Oh shit, sorry."
No, you're good.
No, you're cool. Yeah.
This girl can really channel spirits, like without a doubt, like right in my face. Then I started getting clientele like crazy, and I would just love to just take it further if I can one day. I'm just hoping that one day, I get myself out there more.
Very cool.
It's the hard thing, as in any field, when you do start out, you have a lot of the first few years of really just busting it to try to get people to take notice. And if you're doing it correctly, then after a handful of years or so, it does really start to take on a momentum of itself. And as you said, this year, you really felt it. I think, as bad as the last year and a half has been for so many things, one thing for sure is that it has been a changing of the guard for a lot of things. And, in the last year, you can just feel it in the world, like just naturally, not to speak of politics or anything else that's out there, just in general, there has been a change. And I think it's been a lot of shutting of doors and opening for other people, and powers have been kind of in full bloom, it seems, as of the last year, and I think there's reason for that.
Have y'all noticed, I noticed that a lot of people in the spiritual community, if you remember before 2020, a lot of us had word from the infernal divine and from gods, goddesses, etc. A lot of us had word that 2020 was going to be a game changer. Were y'all part of the group of people that knew beforehand that 2020, that something major was going to happen, and all of a sudden it did? And if you haven't noticed, it seems like everybody's waking up, even the people who never would have woken up before. 2020 changed everything. Did y'all notice that?
Well, there was some prophecy ahead of time on that, in different forms, from both theoretical and religious to just supernatural things that kind of predicted that ahead of time. And it happened in ways I don't think any of us really were expecting. Kind of in a strange way, when you look back in hindsight now, the last year has been very peculiar, but I think ahead of time we knew something was coming, when.
One thing that Garrett and I discussed on one of these episodes, which, in a sense, to touch on what you said about when you were younger, that you had a traumatic experience that led you into your spiritual work. Well, the concept is about catalysts. And so Garrett and I were talking about, with these boom of spiritual awakenings that are happening, where people are seeing things from a much more broadened scope of perspective, we were talking about how like the whole presidential election and the COVID thing and all of that stuff actually kind of was serving as a catalyst to push people into that rapid sort of awakening. And I know that there was another one of these booms in 2012, which was another year that there was a lot of predictions around 3D predictions around what people speculated or thought was going to happen. But I think that it was less of like an end of the world type of idea and more of like the beginning of a new expansion in consciousness. So I think 2020 was another one of those precursors, or markers in consciousness.
When I think it happens at certain
definitely.
times, like think of 2000, think of the changing of the millennium, and in 2000 everybody thought that the world was going to end, and everyone was prepared in bunkers, and I remember the world being absolutely in chaos for the
Oh my
countdown
God, I
of
was
the ball.
5 years old.
She was 5 years old. We got a young buck here. She was just kind of tiny, but it was wild. And then you think at 2012, then it was again, as Daniel said, and then now 2020, as you said, Tara. It's very interesting that there are these pivotal monument moments that everything just changes. You feel it in the energy. And I forget what year it is. I think it's 2233. Which obviously will all be dead by that point, but there's supposed to be a massive changing of the guard of the different empires of angels. And if you follow any angel work,
I would not doubt that at all.
There's every several hundred years. I don't have the exact numbers, folks, because I read a lot of old books, but it was talking about the different eras of the specific angels, and it said that in 2233 would be the changing again to one of the other powers, and during that time there would be a great silence. And it hasn't happened for like over 300 years. And when it happened last time, I forget, it was like the bubonic plague or something crazy. It was wild. I was just reading it the other day in one of the books I was reading, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's the end of the world from what several things seem to point to.
Well, I know that my grandchildren and my future generations of my family bloodline will be alive then. I'm hoping to raise some spiritual children and pass on the family business, and hope that the future generations of my family will channel me back up from the dead for advice when that time comes.
Hopefully so, yeah, because who knows what will come. But I found that to be very interesting. I'll have to look back up the individual details again. When you read so much, it's hard to remember everything that it talks about, because it goes real deep into the Kabbalistic annotations on that and how it all works. And I think it was one of Eliphas Levi's books I was reading. But very interesting that, there's these moments, like we said, and I think that this last year certainly was one. So I'm glad that it raised your power, because Daniel and I had talked about the fact of more connection alienistically to us from different races of terrestrials out there within the last year, and them being more present in this whole situation. And I think that has brought a lot of different individuals online more.
Well, they're watching, that's for sure. That I can tell. And from the slight communication I have had with some type of alien sources or celestial beings, I could definitely tell that there are bigger powers at work here. I never feel alone, that's for sure.
No,
You're
definitely not. So let's read we got a comment here. So interested in channeling. I don't know. I've encountered some evil spirits, but I didn't know what they were doing or the reason behind it. I've always been very dark and found comfort in it. Oh my God, this is great. Love this. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. First and foremost, thank you for the comment and being a part of the show. It can be scary when you come into contact with things that you're not familiar with what they are. You don't know why they're there. I'm guessing that was a comment from what we were talking about earlier. But the biggest thing that they can tell you, and people joke about it as kids, you see a ghost, you're supposed to ask it, what it wants. People always joke about that, but they never actually ask it what it wants. And if you do that, things change. Because when you actually ask, why are you there? How can I talk to you? They actually will respond to you. And that's the secret. There's a big difference than running away from it and then always seeing it randomly and being like, oh, I don't like them, to actually communicating with something beyond yourself and realizing it's there, and then getting to know it just like anything else, like an animal you come across. It's a spirit, but it is something that is very much present in our reality. And I don't know about everybody else, but I like to sample everything.
Well, I really admire that viewpoint. very glad that you're telling people this because, you know, even in the occult community, I come across a lot of people saying what to do, this and that, when encountering a spirit, rules and what, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the first thing I tell everybody, and I have a huge following of people that are constantly coming to me that have seen and what they quote and consider to be evil spirits, you know. In this line of work, it's like every day, you know, there's an evil spirit attacking me and my family, blah, blah, what do I do? You have to be human. You have to take yourself down to a human level and be, like, empathetic towards something that is clearly in some kind of pain on the other side. Not everything has an evil intention, and usually even the ones that do, it's for a purpose. And it takes the right medium, of course, to be able to bridge this connection and, you know, make sure that the spirit gets what it needs to and is not being treated like an outcast, especially when we have no real understanding of what they are. Just to treat them like they're an outcast or like they're a cockroach in your home is just, it's not okay and it's not right. So all the right information is really important, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. You know, it lets me know that I'm on the right show.
Absolutely. It's just important for people to know. I mean, you have to interact with what's around you or you're not going to understand it and you're going to be afraid of it. There's a paranormal convention coming up and I'm one of the speakers on there, and the specific presentation I'm giving during this event is going to be on the different classifications of spiritual beings that you can come across while in the field of research, so that you understand not everything's a ghost, not everything's a demon, not everything's this or that you understand that there are celestial beings and chthonic, demonic beings, there are shadow people and shadow beings, there are elementals, there's everything that you can think of is really actually out there, and it sounds ridiculous to most, but when you start to define it and understand it, then you don't have to necessarily be afraid of it. We're afraid of what we don't know, so get to know it. And it changes.
It sounds like you're actually really well versed in your mediumship, because to be able to know and differentiate all those things, you have to be.
Well, through most of it for me, I mean, I guess you could say I am, but it's not. It doesn't come to me naturally as, it might for some mind, simply as through ritualistic practices, through scrying, through different forms of divination during ritual. But I mean, I don't normally see or interact with beings on the daily unless I am deep into ceremony and I put myself into certain trance-like states. I can reach that level, but I have to obtain it, which I guess isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like a light switch. I get to choose whether I want to flick it or not. Some people can. It's just always flicked. So, I guess it goes
mine
both
is always
ways.
flicked.
That's what I figured. So, yeah, it's a little bit opposite there, which, I mean, they're both good in their own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, stay flicked,
Stay flicked. We have a question from a listener here. He says, question, are we always in the process of channeling energy in spirits?
Ooh, let me start. I'm going to start with that one. I would say the answer is absolutely yes. Now, this gets deep into quantum physics and metaphysics, but you're actually channeling all the time. So what that means is your personality as, Garrett or Daniel or Mitchell here, you're channeling your own personality from a higher density, from a higher dimension, and you're downloading your own consciousness into this physical avatar. So I would say that we're always in the channeling state, and you're always channeling your own persona. And this is why, like, say, for example, when I go into a semi-trance and I bring through the consciousness of another entity, I'm just moving Daniel James out of the way and pushing my own consciousness into the background so that I can sort of download the consciousness of another being and then use my body as a vessel to communicate. Now, in terms of always being in the channeling state, another thing that I want to break down for people is that channeling isn't as mystic as it might sound, and it isn't something that you necessarily have to go into an altered state to do. You're actually in a channel. Right? You're always in a channeling state when you're doing something artistic or creative, and you're very present and focused in the present moment. You're actually in a semi-trance or a semi-channeling state because your brainwave frequencies are altering in order to do the creative things that you're taking action on. So I just wanted to demystify the concept of channeling a little bit, because I do believe that it's something that everybody can do with training. Some people are innate and maybe just do it automatically, or it happens to them accidentally and consciously, but it can always be taught as well, and that we are always in a semi-trance channeling state as well.
I'm glad you said that, because in the community where there's so many gatekeepers who say that it's not okay, or not everybody is a medium, not everybody can channel. Somebody that is good at it knows for a fact that you can learn and that it can be taught as well. Yep.
And I like the term gatekeepers because they're everywhere, you know, always trying to sort of misdirect and, in a way, stifle people's natural abilities as well.
Once again, I think it goes to that fear. You know, you hear someone trying to learn something that you don't agree with or you're afraid of, you automatically try to deter someone else from doing it. Oh, that's silly, or that isn't real. But when you ask these people all the time, especially me for paranormal research, people all the time, well, I've never experienced a spirit. I'm like, when the fuck's the last time you went out and actually sat somewhere for 6-7 hours in a haunted location and listened? I've never done that. I'm like, exactly, shut up. You know, what you're saying is pointless to me. I've never experienced it because I haven't done it. Well, you haven't experienced bungee jumping either. Does that mean it's not real? You know what I mean? Like, that means nothing to me. And it just has always been strange, you know, when people say that. But so many people I've watched go from skeptic to believer by just having that one specific situation. And as you said, Terra, earlier, as far as like, you know, people believing beings are evil, you know, something's only evil if it's against your agenda.
Yep.
So does that make it evil, or does that make it just something with a different intention than you? So as you said, a lot of times you find these beings that might even be more of a malevolent nature, but really it's because they're in need of something or they're serving a purpose. It's just not a purpose that we necessarily associate or agree with. So most people define that as evil, but it's just a different side of the spectrum. There is no, you know, two different things. It's just different degrees of the same thing.
Yep.
It's the same thing with the channeling as you and Daniel were talking about. I mean, we all have these abilities and we are all channeling at all times, but the higher channels most people don't get. They have basic cable. They haven't bought the you know, the deluxe package. And you know, whenever you get that, you start getting these higher channels and you're like, holy shit, what is all this? I didn't know this existed. And that's most people are, you know, between channel 1 and 22. And then, you know, when you get up to the hundreds, there's all kinds of weird programming. And that's where you start to come into these different dimensional beings, whether it's natural, whether it's something that can be taught, whether it's something that's done during ritual, it's there. I mean, and it's funny when people don't believe because there's so many accounts of it that how can you be a naysayer? It's okay to say, hey, I don't know anything about what you guys do. But don't try to shoot it down just because you haven't experienced it, because I mean, we're just, you know, experiencing life in a very low-dimensional phase. You know, I don't think people are just going to keep coming back when they have that type of mindset.
Well, maybe one day, if y'all are up to it, I can do another podcast with y'all, and I could take free readings or free mediumships. I am always open to taking on-the-spot clients, make somebody a believer. I do it often on my own channels.
No, that'd be pretty dope.
Awesome.
Have
fun.
People on and be like, hey, listen, you know, learn for yourself. And sometimes that's what people need to really open up and have an experience. We never believe until we believe, you know. That's once you have that experience, that's it.
Yep.
So, Terra, here's a question. When I first got into channeling, I would say it was about 2012, 2013. And when I was teaching myself to channel, I learned from a few courses and also reading the Seth Speaks material. But before I ever got into extraterrestrials and aliens, which I was synchronistically guided into, that was always my path. Some people work with the demonic, some people work with angels, some people work with only human spirits, and mine was always going to be like the extraterrestrial sort of idea. But my bridge into that was working directly with my spirit guides. Now, all of us have a spirit council, and some of that is angelic, some of it is extraterrestrial, some of it is just human in a non-physical form. But my spirit guides were the first beings that I made a conscious connection to at the beginning of my channeling journey, and being an intuitive, learning to speak to them both consciously and in trance, but making a relationship and identifying them was where I started back in about 2012, 2013. Now, earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned your spirit guides. So I was wondering, by chance, would you like to maybe talk about that a little bit, or are you familiar with who they are? Do you have a relationship? Like, tell us about your guides.
Okay. So like I said, something, you know, a long time ago, well, I have proof now of who it is, but, and it's kind of weird, but, my main spirit guide, is actually who I believe is the Archon of Baal and Moloch and this particular spirit. How do I know for sure? When I was young, very young, 10, 11, and onwards, there is a spirit that would come and talk to me and manifest himself in my dreams, in my visions. Well, it was a man, but it was the head of a bull, and it was always that. And would never reveal to me his name, but would always say I started channeling on notebook paper, and I started channeling on my own homemade Ouija boards. Everybody wants to joke about that, but, real mediums know that tool is impeccable. I can go on and on about Ouija boards, but I've since moved off of them just because my clients don't like them, and I find them to be a little bit muddled with too much information. Raw channeling through notebook paper and pencil is, in my opinion, the best way to get that channel down to an accuracy point. But anyways, I started channeling, I guess what I would consider as a chant, and one day I stumbled across, I haven't really read too many occult books. I try to keep my knowledge based on just channeling because I rely on it. But I came across a Michael Ford book, which is the first book that I I didn't know anything about Luciferianism or, any of this Satanism stuff. I didn't know anything. I had just been channeling human spirits for my friends and family because I was like, hey, I can do this, But I had been channeling like a chant, and then I stumbled across a passage that was the invocation of Moloch, and I got really freaked out, actually, because, there is, if y'all know or are familiar with the spirit Moloch, a lot of people have a lot of really bad interpretations of who he is. There's a lot of really scary stuff out there, and honestly, I was a little bit mortified because I was not familiar that I was working with demons or anything. And I actually saw the name come up he was channeling to me his name, and I saw the name come up to me in a book, and it shattered my world. And then what I read about him, it shattered my world. I got upset. I got very upset because, I have children, and I was just, at that time, I was like, oh no, demons, oh no, my kids, oh no, what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And he had told me himself, he kept me shielded from the information of who he was until I was about 19. Because I would be scared of him. It took me a little while to acclimate to him, but after I broke down the fact that people don't know what they're talking about, and, the human sacrifice culture of the ancient days where people would sacrifice, people to the gods, I just stepped away from all that, and I tried to see him for who he was and what he taught me, everything. So I can tell you that I know who my main spirit guide is. It's the only one that's ever been with me in forms of an 100% hands-on teacher. I have never learned anything from any other spirit back in the day other than him. Now, I've learned a lot from other spirits since. But so I would say that I am very linked up with Baal.
Okay, no, that's very interesting. Is the Canaanite gods, very powerful, very influential on history and what was to come after that. And if you look at Moloch, if you look at Baal, if you look at Baal-zebul, if you look at Dramalek, if you look at any of these great old, ancient Canaanite spirits, they're extremely wise. I've worked with some of them and had some wild experiences, as you've said, and something that one of my guests on my other show coming up had talked about in one of their books. Moloch, I think, when they talk about child sacrifice and they talked about the children being offered to the gods in fire and baptism by fire, I think it was interpreted wrong from what I have read from Baron and Baronessa Aragni, which are two phenomenal occultists. I couldn't be more excited to have them on Knights of the Nephilim. These two, what I've read from them has blown my mind in a lot of different ways compared to anything that I'm seeing any other practitioner releasing right now, filling in the gaps on things. And they talked about this being a baptism by fire, where it was some sort of rite that children that were to be indoctrinated into this religion, into the higher arts of this religion, were put through as a test, as a hazing of sorts. And yes, I'm sure over time there might have been some that lost their lives, but what it is to believe is they were baptized by fire, and if you made it through the baptism, you were to be ascended as something higher. And that really resonates with me.
Yep. And, you know, that's what's even scarier is, well, it's not scary to me now, but at the time when my world was opened up, I was a little bit just taken aback by the fact that I had been through, you know, when I started reading about the spirit of Molech, and I call him Moloch, I call him all different kinds of things, Paul, it just really touched me with the fact that I had literally been in proven contact with an ancient god. Before then, it was just voices. It was just, I can talk to your grandma, I can talk to your grandpa, and it's real. And then something happened to where there was very clearly some type of dominant spiritual, you know, deity with me. And when I turned 19 and I discovered who it was, I guess you can even tell me just talking about it now. I mean, it just changed my life. I was just so baffled by the fact that I was in contact with an ancient god, let alone he taught me everything I knew and almost basically is like a father to me. And, you know, that's what's so special about having that mediumship connection with the spirit guide. I can honestly tell you, you know, I have a father, and that's my father spirit, and I owe a lot to him for my awakening.
No, that's very interesting. I'm sitting there thinking about myself and how I had similar experiences, like I said earlier, where it was years later I had come to the realization that there was not only one but several, but one particular spirit that was with me for a very long time and had a lot of influence over my life, and has really shaped you know, the workings to come for me as an occultist, and that was Asmodeus. And it's very interesting that you say that you had a very similar experience, because for years I knew there was something there, and then I started heavily jumping back into my work. I had taken years off and really just read, and started doing ritual again a few years back, and have immersed myself, and through workings with different spirits I started working with Asmodeus, and the wildness of the experiences that I had both on an internal and external level around me with paranormal activity was mind-boggling. And through different sessions with him, through deep meditation, you know, in vision, he has shown me that he was the one that was there for quite some time, and it's really changed a lot of how workings to come were going to be for me, and how much I've made this a passion of mine. So, you know, I'm getting choked up talking about it. You know, something I don't speak of too often.
It's a really beautiful thing. Really, it is.
It really is. So, no, I'm glad you've experienced something similar. Daniel, what would you like to know? Throw another question out.
Well, I mean, I'm just enjoying the conversation and listening to you guys, you know, go back and forth on these things. I'm honestly really open to Terra's suggestion about maybe doing like some just cold readings on maybe a call-in or somebody in the chat or something would be really cool. I know that it's fun to sort of flex those muscles, especially on short notice. Like when somebody asks me to channel in something, I always get a little nervous at first, but then when I do it, it feels really good. Like an explosion of creativity. So just to throw that out there, maybe I'm definitely down to have you do that maybe on a future episode.
Well, you know, it'd be cool is doing that with our call-in show. So we do episodes, Terra, from time to time where people will call in, tell us experiences with the paranormal and supernatural, unsolved mysteries, different things that they've encountered personally themselves. We could do a hybrid episode of that mixed with you reading for someone and telling them some things about them. So it's kind of a double dip. Hey, I've had some weird experiences, let me tell you, and while I'm talking to you, let me learn some things. I think that'd be kind of cool, because we were planning on doing a few more of those this season. We did a few last, and they're always very fun.
Well, we can do it under the direction of spirits too. Whatever
exactly.
Spirit guides you would like to use.
I think that'd be cool to kind of steer it towards, this is the type of show tonight is strictly spiritual work. And then you can do readings for them, and maybe some of the stuff will connect with what they're talking about. Maybe it won't, but overall still be a very powerful episode.
Cool.
I see a comment here says, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and that's what we did. It was outcasted just like a roach. God, that... It's so small, I can't see it. God, that's so true, guys. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately... A lot of people shut off things, like I said before, because of fear, or that's just not their beliefs. And I mean, I try not to live by so firm of a structure that I'm not willing to give something acceptance. I'm more of the motto myself of accept everyone and everything for what it is, whether I like it or not. I accept it. I might not like it, unless given a reason otherwise. Always be loving to everybody and be open. And life just seems to fall in place for you. It's the Forrest Gump effect. You happen to be at the right place at the right time for great things to happen when you're open. But if you stay closed off, you're going to get exactly that. Opportunities closed off for you. So unfortunately, there's, Jehovah's Witnesses, whether it's the Amish, whether it's several different types of religions out there, political parties, it doesn't matter what you are. We always find ways of segregating ourselves off to groups. And I'm the opposite. I don't want to be a part of a clique. I'm just me. I'm accepting of all.
I would agree. Yeah, man. And you have to have that type of skin and perspective in today's age with so much divisiveness happening socially and with everyone's different belief structures, whether you're religious or political or, what you do or don't believe in terms of the way our society is changing and why. You have to have that sort of perspective, I think, in order to just get through each day.
You do. I mean, especially now, man. Things have been, like I said, things have been pretty crazy. You have to... I just try to look for the good in everything. I always look, to the sky every day and have a good day. Every now and again you have a bad one. But if you go about your day looking for reasons to have a problem, you're going to have problems. And that's exactly what it is what you focus on is exactly what you get. And most people overlook that. It's like, yeah, it's so simple. No, it really is that simple.
Energy flows where attention goes.
That's it, man. You pull to you what it is that you attract, and what you attract is what you send out from you, your signals. Like attracts like. Now, Terra, I have a question for you because I was interested. You do a lot of work with different spirits. You do a lot of channeling. You used to use a Ouija board often, and as you said, that is a great tool. And in fact, I was just talking to a recent guest of mine, Nate Bells, on Knights of the Nephilim, great practitioner, and he was talking about his, doing very well on that board and that tool to really bring spirits through. I would usually use different bases than a Ouija board, but I know of its effectiveness. But during any of your sessions, during any of the workings have you seen where it has gone wrong and someone get possessed? Because I myself have seen possessions. So I'm guessing you have when you do that much work. Or even yourself.
I myself have been through so much with that board. I can tell you right now, that board, I don't know. I've broken it down. I've figured it out for the most part. It's some kind of hypno tool. Works on the basis of your cognition and your brain patterns. You got the layout of the letters, the numbers, the yes and the no. Somehow it's some type of hypno trance board. Okay. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that it's a trance tool. I myself, I'm a little bit of a weirdo. I used to stay up all night by myself in my room as a teenager with, I would spend 10 hours on the board all night by myself talking to anything. I can say it made me who I am. I mean, I have been in situations that were so frightening with that board, but I still didn't back down. That's kind of why I'm here today, is because, I kind of worked my way up the ranks. I was a young girl, and the things on the board realized that I wasn't going to back down no matter how scary it got in the situation. I mean, I've gotten to the point where it was just violently talking to me. The pendulum, the movements, just extremely aggressive and frightening. In every way, just tranced out, just totally lost, hours at a time, sober. And I just refused to back down. I refused to let any spirit think that they were going to scare me away from the mysteries of the unknown. And when they asked me what I wanted, I said, I don't want anything. I want to know you. I want to know everything. And then it just hit me, and I got some kind of possession. And I don't normally talk about this, but there is a moment in my practice where I did endure some type of very, very, very real extreme possession by, now this is different. It wasn't done by Molech. It was done by which is really interesting. I did not know that, I don't even know how to pronounce it. In the occult, they talk about Oz, right? A-Z, whatever. Lilith, Kali, this archon of her, okay, the beginning and the end. Now, my board was just, like, furiously going back and forth between A and Z, and it was saying Zaza, Zaza, and I didn't know that was a gate. I didn't know what that was. Now, you can imagine my surprise when I'm reading some Luciferian books, and they're all, here's how you open the gate to hell. Zaza, Zaza. I'm all, oh, shit, I done opened the gates to hell. Okay, so I was probably, like, 16 when this happened, and my board is going back and forth violently, Zaza, Zaza, Oz, Oz, and then next thing you know, I'm just different. Something comes inside me, and it is clearly a female. This is what I don't talk about a lot, but I do have an archon of Lilith with me at all times, very much so. Didn't know it was her. She actually pretended to be a male for a long time within me until I figured her out. But something happened to me. I don't know what happened, but I was just not myself. If I can explain that, it's like being normal and then the next minute being schizophrenic. but also knowing that you're not crazy. But yeah, I got possessed very heavily during a session with the Ouija board, and it was not cool. I mean, it was cool, but I could say it took me several weeks to get back to normal, and I was never really normal after that. Well, I think that people only hope to achieve that level of possession, you know?
You can, it's something to be very, very wary and careful of, but it is used by certain practitioners where self-induced possessions of the deities you're working with, once you've formed a tight enough bond and connection with them through ritual workings and you feel comfortable enough taking on that step. I mean, invoking, obviously, in itself is kind of seeing through each other's eyes, but there's deeper levels of invoking, and a lot of people in the occult don't know that. And if they're even actually getting the results of invocation, they don't realize how much deeper it can get. It's like doorways, and as you go deeper and deeper, there's heavier levels of possession. And it can be absolutely intense. It can be terrifying. It can be amazing.
God, I was
and
just
be
a kid when that happened. Yeah, and nobody, I didn't have any direction. Nobody told me, like, hey, if you spend 10 hours a day on the Ouija board, you're going to fuck around and get possessed. Nobody told me anything. I was just a kid. The thing is I cannot help being drawn to the other side. You know, there wasn't a demon in hell that was going to scare me away from opening that gate that day, you know, looking back, of course. And I think it's just the fact that I was so open to not backing down that they said, okay, you want to come here? Well, then here we are. And then, yeah, ever since then, that marks the time, 16 years old, that marks the day and moving forward that I was just impeccably accurate. I mean, just everything changed for me. And it was due to a possession, and I do believe, hands down, 100%, that it was with either Lilith or some kind of infernal, divine, feminine entity. Now, I guess just demons are attracted to me, but that's who my awakenings were.
No, and that's all it takes is I've said about it before in some past shows that there's a one-on-one counterpart that once you reach levels within your own mind and you open the gate, they do arrive. And once they arrive, they bring with them a key if you reach high enough levels. That key then in return unlocks a secondary gate. So it takes opening the gate itself to receive them properly. Once you receive them, if trusted enough and do it correctly, you will receive a key to unlock a second door. And once you do that, it opens your minds to incredible unhuman-like powers. And it doesn't just, boom, you got them. It just takes, over time, you'll start to realize, I'm reading these books, and all of a sudden, I'm understanding everything I'm reading. And I used to not understand half this shit. Can I
say something?
Certainly.
Okay, I just wanted to put it out there, though, because this is very important and always asked. Okay, I talk a lot about demons. I need for people listening to know that when I channel human spirits, because it is a very, people, you know, there's, with mediumship, people are always saying, okay, how do you know you're not talking to a demon? Super important topic. I want to separate that out for a minute because I specialize in speaking to human spirits. You can 100% tell when you're talking to a demon versus talking to a human spirit, and you can 100% prove it. So I just didn't want anybody to get discouraged thinking that because I talk to so many demons that my human mediumship is somehow flawed. You know what I mean?
No,
because
absolutely.
So many people get so freaked out whenever I say I talk to demons, but yet I specialize in speaking to human spirits that might have crossed onto what people consider as heaven or things like that, you know?
See, for me, it's the same goal, though. I completely know where you're coming from, and I think they're kind of interconnected. The term necromancy used to be different than it is meant today. When you think of necromancy today, you think of strictly working with the dead and the spirits of the dead. It's still a very taboo art that is very frowned upon, even though I don't see why. I mean, it's no different than most other ritualistic practices, but it's just working with the dead. But back in the day, necromancy really stood for spiritual invocation and evocation of demons and different chthonic type beings, the dead, human dead, and a lot of different spirits. So all was kind of connected, and the people that did these workings really were channeled into both. It was frequent for someone to work with demons or daemons and also work with spirits of the dead as well. For some reason, though different, they're very interconnected.
Yeah, they're extremely similar, too. I mean, honestly, speaking to a demon and a human being, the frequency is almost identical. It's different, but very similar.
It has a different, how would I describe it? It has a different feeling. It's the same. I mean, they're similar, as you said. It's a different feeling as far as feeling that I get. I'm only speaking for myself, but it comes with a different resonance to it.
Yep.
Very interesting. I figured at some point there had to have been some type of possession of self or someone around you. I've seen both for myself. Certainly I've experienced it as part of my practice, but I've seen other people that have been taken by something that I haven't been able to always figure out what it was. It was a dark being of sorts, but not like your daemons. It would be I'm starting to make a different classification where certain levels of parasitic beings I'm actually considering as demons, not daemons. I always make sure I make that classification, but I believe very really that there is demons out there. They're just malevolent beings that can't be reasoned with.
They're not the 72.
Yeah, they're just wanting to cause chaos. They're really not.
Yep.
They're not really have a purpose of being reasoned with. They're just pure utter chaos, and I've come across those as well.
Have you been able to navigate any of those correctly and have them listed to you, things like that?
No. The couple instances that I've come across something, it was through gate work that I had done, and somehow opened something or something came through, and it wasn't able to be controlled, only really banished out. And I usually try to work with anything that I have called forth, but these happened at paranormal locations, and I want to make that that distinct fact, folks, is when in ritual at my own home or in a temple or at an altar, the beings that I come in contact with or the experiences that I have are very different than when anything has happened or any type of rituals have been done at paranormal locations or land. When you're actually on a ley line of sorts where it is known to be a supercharged, ghostly activity type place, a very paranormal place, things seem to be different. I don't know if it's like steroids to them or if it's just it cross frequencies them with other beings. I'm not sure because I can't fine tune it that much, but I know that the experiences that I've had at haunted locations when something has been channeled has been a lot more aggressive than when I do at my temple.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned, remember how I said I'm a little bit freaked out when I go to locations because it's not my forte, but yet I get really excited because sometimes somebody will say, hey, I need you to come out to my house. Something's messing with my family. And I get excited. I'm like, yes, I'm finally going to get a job where I get to encounter some real deal action, because every day I do mediumship channeling and it's nothing to me. It's literally just everyday thing for me. Now, I would love to be doing some big paranormal locations, haunted locations. That would be everything to me. But it's very rare when I get that chance, probably because I haven't put myself out there for it. But you're totally right. I've been in these locations, and it is just, I have to do everything I can. And this is me. I work with demons. I work with everything. And I'm still, just the energy is just freaky, just totally freaky to me. And I have to, calm myself down and remember that I'm in charge here. I'm the channeler. I can banish something if I need to. I can talk to whatever it is. And even still, the energy there is totally different. You're right. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's just the fact that it's some type of hotspot.
I think it's the fact of whether you're opening it on regular, regular land, regular place where it comes with that intent that you're calling upon it compared to being in a place where there's already some type of thinning of the veil. And when you open it, it just hits different. I don't know why, but for some reason it's not the same doorways. They're very similar in ways, but for some reason the door's different. It takes you to a little bit of a different frequency, though still somewhat the same. So thought that would be a very, very interesting topic. We have a little bit left here, Dan. Why don't you fire away another question? We'll probably start to wrap up here shortly.
Well, I'll remark on that little topic. I used to live in Olympia, Washington, and I grew up there. I lived there for 17 years in my youth, say teenagers into my early and mid 20s, and there was a ley line that ran right through all of Tumwater, Lacey, Shelton, Seattle, all the way to Portland, of a ley line. And it was at that location that I experienced the most of what we would call paranormal activity that I'd ever had in my whole life. But I have a slightly different perspective on the concept of these beings that we're discussing in terms of, say, possession, and we've also discussed entity attachment. But I saw a lot of these things manifest physically when living above ley lines, because I do believe that they're like conductors of higher dimensional frequency that almost works in a sense of like a vortex or a vortices that allows plasmatic beings and etheric beings and beings that exist in what I would call the fourth and the sixth density frequency that are physical from their own perspective, but to us would be non-physical. They exist all around us at all times, and we all have different definitions of what they are and where they come from, whether it's demons or in my own particular definition set would be a type of even malevolent extraterrestrial, depending on what your definitions and your belief structures are. But long story short, I did live on a ley line, and I had some of the most, extreme sort of like horror film experiences that you would only see in movies growing up in that state, in that area. So just to add a little bit of confirmation to the power
I
of
had
ley
a
lines.
dream about Washington last night. I just need to say that because it's really weird that you say that, because I don't know anybody in Washington. I've never been to Washington. I live in Texas. Well, and I just had a dream last night about that I was going to move to Washington. I'm assuming it's just saying that I'm supposed to be here on the show, my spirit guides, but it's just weird.
That's a cool synchronicity, because like I said, I grew up there. I'm not from there. I was born in Orange County, California, but I grew up in Washington State, and I spent, my developmental years there. And I had some of the most spiritual and intense physical encounters with beings in that state, and whereas now I actually channel extraterrestrials and I communicate with them in a variety of ways, but it was in that state, in that small window, that I had a lot of encounters. Now I just visited, so I moved from Washington State to the East Coast in 2010, and I hadn't visited in 11 years. I hadn't gone back once, not for holidays, not to see friends or family. I just never had the chance to go back. So I finally went in December for Christmas, for the holiday. And I can tell you that not just geographically in terms of the way that society changes technologically or with, buildings and things like that, but the energy of that state has changed so much. And I believe that it was in a large part and parcel to the Black Lives Matter movement, to the political situation last year, and to the way that people are interpreting the COVID-19 pandemic. I can tell you that what was my spiritual, new agey mecca of like a home sort of everything, crystal shops everywhere, and everybody did tarot and meditated, had changed quite a bit when I went back, and it was truly heartbreaking to see how fear-based and scared the people are in Washington State now, so much so that we're actually meeting people here in Pennsylvania who have fled Washington State in the last year because they said that it's become so dangerous and so fear-based that nobody's really comfortable living there anymore. And I truly felt that in my bones. I felt it when I went back after 11 years. It was not the place that I left. And I was truly heartbroken and saddened to see that, because if I'm honest, I was considering moving back. I've been on the East Coast for 11 years and never really intended on staying. And I went back there to see if it resonated and the synchronicities would guide me home. But when I got there, it wasn't the same. And I can say in my heart of hearts that I wouldn't feel comfortable going back there with confidence. So I'm curious to see what Spirit was trying to tell you in the dream state, and I'm somebody that's passionate about analyzing dreams because dream speak has a language and it speaks to us in metaphor, in symbolism. So if you can remember anything or specific details about the state itself and what happened in the dream, we might be able to break that down a little bit more and analyze it. But based on the fact of the work that you do and what your abilities are, I can tell you that the state needs healing and the people there need healing, and you might be called to maybe work with somebody specific, or spirit might be guiding you to send maybe some healing energy or something for that area, because I can tell you that it's very dense, it's very dark, and Washington State and Portland, parts of Oregon, are in really bad shape.
Well, feel free to add me on Facebook and message me after, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my dream. I'm certain that it was meant for you.
Awesome. I love that. I love the way the spirit works and these synchronicities, and I'm glad that you're open to, receive that and interpret it, and that spirit put us together to have a conversation about it, because I'm curious to see where this goes.
Awesome.
Now, Terra, I have, before we go and wrap up for the evening, I want to issue a challenge out to you. It's something a little fun, a little different, I think, for you to try and see what type of results you get. I actually told this to Nate Bells last week on Nights of the Nephilim when we had him on for our radio show. And, like I said, he works a lot with spirit boards as well. And I says, have you ever done sensory deprivation spirit channeling with a Ouija board by yourself in a pitch black dark room? And he says, I haven't. I says, well, please put a blindfold on that you truly cannot see through. Put noise canceling headphones on, playing just static, just a nice calm, and then really allow yourself to zone out while holding the planchette and start thinking or asking any questions that you would like with a night vision camera, if you have one that has, just regular, IR light on it, and film your responses that you get, and just take note of your feelings, your experiences, and what happens to you, because something magical happens when you do a spirit board sensory deprivation wise. Whenever you take away the sight, the hearing, the knowing what exactly is going on, but using the board almost as a doorway where it now can then breach that, and you're not relying on your normal motor skills, you're relying on true instinct, and it taps into something. It can't really be explained. Yeah, I say it to you because you're someone with experience. If you're listening out there, folks, and you decide to try to do that, please be warned. I'm putting a forewarning on that. Wild shit can happen to you, so please be careful. But it can cause a very strange effect that normally doesn't happen elsewhere. Now, you don't have to use the camera, but that's just if you want to go back and see what kind of responses you got on the board. You can simply use that as a tool to unlock and have it interact with you internally, but I think both are very valuable, and I just thought that's something you might want to try.
That would be my first bridge into paranormal camera, so I am down to do that. And actually, for some reason, I just ordered like a security camera for no reason, but the other day I ordered 2 security cameras that have night vision on them.
No, that
I'm
is the reason.
I should probably use those.
Yeah, there you go. That was telling you right there that there's something coming up to try out. Is, like I said, that's not really my bag of things I get into. I respect the Ouija board, and I respect your form of channeling. I just personally can't do it like that. I'll work. Hopefully, eventually, I can. I've been kind of working outside of my own field of trying to tap in more frequently without ritual, but that's something I have done personally in my own workings and have had some very peculiar results. So I think both you and Nate Bells, both being experienced as you are, tried, I think you'll both come up with some wild things.
Okay, sounds good. I'll definitely do that.
Well, folks, if you're listening out there, we want to thank you for tuning in tonight. We've given you another great episode, another great interview here on Celestial Oddities. Make sure you click that like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're listening from. That does help us get out there. If you have any suggestions of what you want to see us do on the show, not do on the show, guests you would like to see on upcoming shows, please feel free to message us on Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys Facebook group page, our individual pages, or you can message us at celestialaddities@gmail.com. We will get back to you all the time. Daniel and I are on there daily. We make sure everyone does get a response. and telling you a little bit about our upcoming episodes, and then we'll close out for the evening. Our next episode is going to be with David Weiss. He is a flat earther. He is someone who's very knowledgeable in the field of flat earth. He's been on many different radio shows, television programs. I was listening to him the other day on Chris Jericho's podcast. Very interesting guy, has made quite a name for himself on this knowledge that he has on flat earth, and he brought up some very, very interesting points that I don't hear a lot of other people bringing up. So make sure you tune into that one. I'm actually looking up the date right now. I apologize. My phone closed out here. I had it open. So let's take a look. That is going to be August 19th. It will be the next episode, 2 Thursdays from now. And then, actually, it's a couple Thursdays from now, I think 3. We're off a little on a break here. And then September 9th, Missing 411. Where did they all go? And if you're not familiar with this phenomena, please check it out. There's several Netflix documentaries out on it. Many, many people have disappeared in the forests around the world with no explanation. Bodies never found in most cases. Just simply seem to vanish, and most of the time they were skilled hunters, hikers, woodsmen, and that's someone who usually knows the territory well, and they are disappearing without a trace. Very, very strange activity, Dan. I can't wait to jump into that one with you, and that's personally one of my most anticipated episodes of the season.
Yeah, it's probably going to be an hour and a half long episode.
I would imagine, man. There's a lot to jump into on that one and unpack. And then the last one I'll talk about today, folks, is September 23rd. So I always like to give 3 upcoming episodes. So once again, August 19th, David Weiss, Flat Earther. September 9th, Missing 411. And September 23rd, interview with Pete Mander. He is the owner and creator of P. Mander Effects. He is honestly one of the most skilled special effects costume designers and designers in general that I have come across in a very, very long time. I mean, he is movie quality, should be in Hollywood right now making props for movies. So look forward to bringing him on the show as well. And of course, check out the episodes of Knights of the Nephilim, staggered every week in between these shows. There's always something for absolutely everyone in the occult and paranormal. And Dan, any last messages before we close out for the evening?
Well, Terra, I just want to thank you for being here, and it was very nice to connect with you and have this discussion, and I will be in touch with you.
All right, this was awesome. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem. Well, guys, you heard it, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you again, Terra, and we'll see you later. This is Celestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys podcast. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.